Okay. So the phone is off. And thanks again for doing this. It's much appreciated.
No problem.
Robert, if we could begin with the $800 million payout from MGM Resorts International, can you confirm the distribution process? Will it still happen in January? And how will it be distributed? Are we taking into factors like age and ability to work and things of that nature?
Well, there's a protocol that has been put in place by the third-party administrators. The lawyers, I think as I explained to you in a previous interview, the lawyers, the lawyers who represented the claimants, nor MGM's lawyers or MGM, we can't be involved in that process because it's in mass tort cases like this where you have a large number, in this case, more than 4,000 claimants, it becomes a conflict of interest for the lawyers to try to be involved in allocating how the money will go to each client. That has to be done by an independent group. So in February of this year, well, earlier than that, Judge Bell, our chief judge presiding over this case, she appointed retired Judge Tagliati and retired Judge Lou Messinger as the third-party administrators. They then came up with a protocol of how they would decide and the factors that they would take into consideration on how the money would be allocated between all the various claimants. Because you have the death cases, of course, the loved ones of the people who were killed. And then but you also have some people who were significantly injured, who have lifelong permanent damages. They can't work anymore. They can't provide for their family. Some of these people are just completely 100% disabled. And some of them are literally totally dependent on medical care, significant medical care for the rest of their life. And then you also have people that are part of this settlement who have some emotional or psychological injury claims that had no physical injuries of any kind. And they didn't even, but many of these people did not even get treatment. So you have a wide range of, a vast range of the various type of injuries. So the third-party administrators are applying in the process right now, they're applying the protocols they came up with to each claim. I believe last time I looked, it looked like to me they had completed about 75% or more of the claimant's allocation. Now there's a short appeal process that could occur when a claimant gets their allocation if they think the third-party administrators have made an error or made a mistake or didn't give them credit for certain things. They can appeal that, and then they'll look at it again and make a final allocation. So that process is ongoing right now. With the court granting the good faith settlement motion today, under the protocol, under the settlement agreement, from the time we give notice to everyone of entry of the court's order, which we'll do either this afternoon or tomorrow, there's a 30-day period when someone would have the opportunity to appeal the court's order of granting the good faith settlement. We don't expect anybody to appeal because there was no objection to the good faith settlement. Everybody joined in the good faith settlement. There was initially kind of a semi-objection from some of the gun manufacturers, but then they withdrew that objection a couple of days ago. So this was an unopposed motion. So it's highly unlikely there will be any sort of appeal because there's no basis for an appeal. Which means what just happened there? I got somebody else's voice coming on here.
No problem.
It's weird. Which means in about 30 days, then MGM and their insurance carriers will be responsible for depositing the $800 million into a qualified settlement fund that has been set up with Bank of Nevada here in Nevada. When the claimants, all the injured victims will get their money is really dependent on how much longer it takes the third-party administrators to complete their task of allocating the funds. Like I said, I believe there's 75% or more completed, but there's still a lot of work to do, and no one wants them to rush through this. We want them to continue to do the diligent work that they have been doing, so that this is, completely fair and equitable to everyone involved.
And Robert,
so there is
ahead.
a chance, there's a reasonable chance, chance that we'll be able to distribute the settlement funds to the victims by the end of this year.
Okay.
However, there's a chance it could be January of next year.
So it could be December, could be January, and with the protocol you previously mentioned in terms of age and the number of dependents and the ability to work, is it also true that each and every claimant will receive a minimum of $5,000? Is that accurate?
Well, it's accurate in the sense that the part of the protocol that the third-party administrators came up with is that anybody who is making a claim of emotional distress or psychological injuries, and they didn't get any treatment for it. In other words, they didn't see a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a healthcare professional, a mental health care professional, a priest, a counselor, anything like that, then those people will get a flat amount of $5,000 as a settlement. That is the only injury type category where there's just a set amount. Everything else is depending on medical expenses, past and future, loss of income, the nature, the type of injury they had, the permanency of the injury, etc.
Sure. With you and your team working hard on this for a significant amount of time, and you look at people from 8 Canadian provinces, the UK, Ireland, what was the biggest logistical challenge in getting to this point?
Well, I mean, obviously, whenever you have a mass tort case like this, and we have thousands of clients, some of the logistical problems and the hurdles, I would say, and the challenges are making sure you communicate effectively with all the clients. Everybody knows what's going on and are kept informed and in the loop. In addition to that, not just the number of clients, we had a vast number of attorneys representing victims in this case. While I had a leadership group working with me of 2 other firms along with my firm, there were 75 or so other law firms or lawyers that were involved in this case that were part of our team. And I started having monthly meetings with them in my office in Las Vegas starting in, I think we had the first one in January of 2018, and they continued monthly for quite some time, and then every couple of months, and then the time went farther. That was one of the biggest logistical things, was organizing everybody, getting all the claimants' lawyers to work together with each other and cooperate with each other for the common goal we had. And fortunately, that worked really well. I had a great leadership team, and the lawyers involved in this case were very professional, and we were able to work very, very well together. So it was while it was challenging, I certainly have had other cases where that task has been more challenging. The biggest thing in this case is the mediation, the settlement negotiations. That was a very, very lengthy process. And to be honest with you, it wasn't the money that was the biggest problem. It was, or not the problem, I guess, but the challenge. It was all the protocols and all the details of the settlement and how it would work.
Sure.
Getting all the insurance companies to pay all their policy limits. There was a tower of insurance for MGM. I can't remember the total number of insurers, but I think it was north of 24, a tower of 24 insurers, to get them to tender, all of their policy limits, and again also to get MGM to contribute nearly $50 million over and above their insurance policies. Believe it or not, though, that was not the most challenging part of this. It was actually the details and the settlement, the protocols and stuff. Yeah.
You mentioned the nearly $50 million that MGM pays above the insurance. So MGM pays $49 million, and then the insurance companies pay $751 million. But is this accurate? The company does acknowledge no liability. That's correct?
Well, yeah, and I know a lot of people always want to talk about that, but that's standard.
That's
You
standard,
know, I
yes.
mean, every settlement, that's what a settlement is it is a very unusual situation where the defendant in a settlement will acknowledge liability. You
Sure.
know, it's almost always in 33 years of practice. I'm not sure I've ever seen them actually a defendant acknowledge liability. I mean, we go to trial in cases and there's a verdict against them. Even then, they don't many times don't acknowledge liability. So I don't have any criticism of MGM over that because that's standard practice and it's just the way it works in this country.
You have heard through your work and the work of your leadership team the tragic stories of those who were injured that night, some severely injured, and the most money will go to the most severely and most permanently injured. Talk about what that means for them and the impact it will have on their lives and helping them continue some quality of life.
Well, look, no amount of money can bring back the not lives that were needlessly lost or heal all the injuries that were suffered. And virtually in no settlement is anybody ever 100% compensated for their injuries. You know, that happens sometimes when we go to trial and get a verdict, get a judgment and collect on the judgment, but settlements are compromises. That's what they are. And there was a lot of significant legal issues in this case, a lot of hurdles that we would have to overcome. The Safety Act was a big concern. It never been, you know, no one had ever brought that up, and it never had the opportunity to bring that up in any case before. No one was really sure how that would affect, but we did know that if a court ruled that it did apply, then these victims collectively, the most they could have gotten would have been about $25 million, and that's a far cry from $800 million. And now there were some risks on the other side as well, and certainly MGM and their lawyers recognized those risks, and that's why I think everybody fully recognized the risk on both sides, and that's why reasonable minds were able to prevail here. We were able to get this done because of that. Yes, the compensation I think will help, and it will hopefully allow these victims to have some closure and begin the healing process. I'm not saying anyone's going to ever be fully healed from this, but at least begin the healing process. And certainly our community, it's the best thing for our community. But no one, I think, on either side of this case wanted to relive this tragedy over and over and again, and me having to step into trial every 2 or 3 months to start a new trial in one of these cases here in Las Vegas and try these cases over and over and over again. It certainly wouldn't have been good for the victims having to go through that. It would not have been good for MGM, you know, and it certainly would not have been good for this community. So I think that, you know, I'm certainly not going to try to claim that all of these victims are being fully compensated for their injuries or the loss of their loved ones. But it is a record-setting, phenomenal settlement. And along with that, one of the things the press should know about is that almost all of the medical providers waived their fees. Wow. Whatever they could not collect in insurance, or if people didn't have insurance, almost virtually all the Nevada medical providers stepped up and waived their fees, waived their cost of the medical care they provided, including the hospitals. And I think they should be commended for that. Also, both the state of Nevada and the state of California, which is where most of the victims come from, as those two places, both of those states have victims of crime funds. Substantial money was paid out of their victims of crime fund to many of these victims, to Nevada residents out of the Nevada Crime Victims Fund, and to California victims. And both the funds provide that they have subrogation rights. In other words, if somebody reaches a civil agreement, a civil settlement, and they get money compensation, then they have the right to go in and get their money back. Both California and Nevada waived those subrogation rights, so those victims do not have to pay back the money they received. And I would commend Governor Sisolak and Attorney General Ford, who led that charge to get that done for us in the state of Nevada. And I would commend Governor Newsom for that in California, because that really meant a lot to these victims and really helped out. And it made it so they didn't have to pay those funds back. And then with the medical providers waiving, any of their co-pays and fees over and above what they received in insurance, was a really tremendous thing of them all coming together. And I think they should really be commended for that.
Thank you for pointing that out. That is commendable, and we'll make sure to mention that. And as we communicate this through our newscasts and online, and maybe some of the people that were there are just hearing about it on the news or reading about it, they will be receiving this settlement from the good faith settlement motion. They'll be receiving this money, as you said, in December or January. Is there any other message or any other information you wanted to impart to them?
No, I just think that, again, particularly the victims, because they're the ones who had to live through this. I think that they have done a very commendable job on how they proceeded in this case, how they handled it. And I think the fact that everybody worked so hard together, and I think the proof's in the pudding. Out of 4,000 plus victims, there was only one victim who opted out of the settlement.
Interesting.
And I've been doing this for 33 years, class actions and lots of big mass tort cases with a lot less victims than the 4,000 plus we had here. And I have never seen any case come close to having only one a victim opt out of the settlement. It is unheard of.
That really is. I have the number I have is 4,400, and just one.
Just one.
And that, does that one individual then have a separate lawsuit, if you will? Well,
I'm not sure he filed a lawsuit. Okay. If he may have, to my knowledge, but he is a victim who claimed emotional, psychological injuries, but had no treatment. So, the most he would have gotten in the settlement is $5,000.
Anything else we can get out information-wise as we wrap up here? Anything else we're not touching upon?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay.
I would just say that this is, again, this is a milestone. I think one thing I would say is, this, to my knowledge, this is the first and only mass shooting case in America to ever reach a global settlement for all the victims. And that is largely because of the people involved on both sides of this case. MGM and their lawyers, as well as the lawyers working with me, we're all reasonable people trying to do the right thing and to get this done. But also, it is also a testament to the state of Nevada and our laws that protect consumers here. Because I will tell you that in the vast majority of states around the country, when you have a fact pattern like this, with the shooter coming into a hotel and doing what this man did on that night, it would have been virtually impossible to pursue a case like this anywhere else. And I think that's very commendable to our state and their concern for the consumers in our state.
Well, we really, Robert, appreciate your time, and to you and your leadership team, all your hard work on this. We know it means a lot to those 4,400 people in terms of their quality of life and moving forward in the best way they can. So thanks for taking the time to inform us, and we'll make sure to get this integrated into our newscast this evening.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, Robert. Have a good one. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye now.